Returning to one of our top stories now, US President Joe Biden has made a pitch to Americans in a bid to garner support for proposed US military aid on two fronts during a primetime address from the White House. Joining me live is Charles Miller, Senior Lecturer, ANU, School of Politics and International Relations. Charles, thanks so much for your time. Quite a bit to unpack from President Biden's Oval Office primetime address today. First of all, what did you make of it? How important was that speech?
Well, I mean, it's been described as a very impressive piece of oratory by a number of different authorities. Whether it's going to make very much of a difference to the US domestic scene, and obviously that's where it's directed at, is another question. I think that it's quite clever politics by Joe Biden to try and bind together the two different scenarios in Ukraine and Israel. I think by tying Ukraine into Israel, that's an attempt to buy support amongst Conservatives and Republicans who tend to be more pro-Israeli than they are pro-Ukrainian, and vice versa. By trying to tie Israel into Ukraine, that's a good pitch to make to Liberals and Democrats who tend to be more pro-Ukrainian than they are pro-Israeli.
Republican senators say President Biden is risking a government shutdown by tying the aid package to Ukraine for Israel. They're demanding the $60 billion in aid for Ukraine and $40 billion for Israel and Taiwan to be debated separately. Why do you think the president is presenting the bill to Congress in this way? And are those threats, do you think, from the Republicans credible?
Well, I mean, I think that the credibility issue that they have is the fact that it's not entirely clear that even if Biden gives them what they want, that they're not going to shut down the government for some other reason. To be honest, I mean, it's credible in the sense that I can quite believe that they would shut down the government because they've done it before. They've even done it under Donald Trump. The credibility issue that they have is more about the idea that if Biden gives them what they want, that they will not bring about a government shutdown.
The president also said that we can't give up on the two-state solution in Israel, but what we are going to see is a ground assault by on Gaza by the IDF. Can we ever get to a point where we can realistically talk about a two-state solution again, like what President Joe Biden is saying?
Well, I think it will be a long time before we can get to that point. I mean, obviously, like you said, it's looking more and more certain that Israel is going to go in on the ground in Gaza. There will be huge casualties, both in the Israeli Defense Force and also, of course, very sadly amongst civilians in Gaza. So it's going to generate even more anger and bitterness than what has already been generated, and what has already been generated is a lot. So I think it will take a very long time, and I'm not really entirely sure what Israel's end game or what Israel's end plan is, or even, to be honest, if they have one. The strategy they've pursued up till now is what they call mowing the grass, which is the idea that they can't really permanently solve the problem of Gaza, so they will just periodically whenever Hamas attacks, or whenever Hamas's attacks get beyond a certain level, they will bomb or punish the Gaza Strip in some way in response to that. That's clearly not working, but it's also not clear what the alternative is, because they don't, if they were to get rid of Hamas entirely, it's not clear who would take over in the Gaza Strip. They may have to reoccupy it themselves, but I don't know if there's really the support amongst the Israeli population, if Israel really has the manpower even to reoccupy the Gaza Strip. So I think that the problem is that although the two-state solution is something that's not going to be a viable solution, I don't think, for quite some time, all of the other options are worse.
Prime Minister Anthony Albanese is saying he's not going to visit Tel Aviv on the way to the United States, despite urging from the coalition to visit Israel. Is this the right decision, in your opinion?
I think so. I don't honestly think that Australia has very much leverage in this situation. I don't think there's much we can do about it. All we can really do is just to remember that we do have the ability, we do have it within our power to make sure that all Australians and everybody living here of whatever religion feels safe, feels welcomed, And that's really all we can do, is just to focus on our own domestic situation, and to make sure that we don't allow people to fall prey to either anti-Semitism or Islamophobia.
And do you think that if Anthony Albanese did visit Israel, that it would inflame tensions domestically?
Well, I mean, it may do to some degree, but more importantly, I think it just wouldn't really make very much of a difference to the situation in Israel. Like I said, there's really only one country that has a really large amount of leverage in the region, and that's the United States. Australia doesn't. We're too small, we're too far away. So I think it's best for Anthony Albanese to concentrate on doing things that are within his capacity to shape.
Charles Miller, thanks so much for your time today. Appreciate it.